Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to Intentional Conversations podcast. We are so excited that you have joined us today. We never take it lightly when people show up during this hour of time to be a part of our podcast community. So we want to extend our gratitude. This is our fifth year celebrating intentional conversations. And so we're finding lots of moments throughout the year to be able to lean in to that significant milestone. We wouldn't be here without the support of our community. So thank you once again. I want to invite you to share in the chat where you are joining the conversation from. This allows us to know where all the different geographies that are being represented among those who are part of our community. It's exciting for us to see the many different cities and markets that are represented, not even just in the US, but even outside of the US. And so go to the chat and let us know where you're joining the conversation from. I also want to give a special shout out to those who are joining us via LinkedIn Live. We do appreciate the many different ways in which people will connect with us during this hour. And so some of you are watching live on LinkedIn. And I want you to know that you can go to the comment section and share your thoughts, your sentiments, any affirmations, questions, resources. My team is watching that closely and we're bringing it over into the Zoom chat so that we all can be connected. And here at NWC, we really do value disability inclusion. And as such, I want you to know that closed caption has been enabled for your benefit. So if that can enhance your experience today, then know that that is available for you. If you desire to have members of this community to reach out to you beyond this hour of time, then drop your LinkedIn information into the chat. My team will do the same for my information. I would love to be connected with you on LinkedIn if we are not already. But that's just another way for us to extend this community and connectedness. I hope you enjoyed today's show. It is one that I have been looking forward to. We're going to have some rich dialogue and conversations. But once again, I want to welcome you to Intentional Conversations podcast. I am Dr. Nika, your host, the founder and lead principal consultant, NWC. Enjoy the show. Let the conversations begin, indeed, and that is precisely what we're about to do. Once again, if you're just tuning in, you have joined Intentional Conversations podcast, where we intersect dialogue of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, all the things, right? With leadership in business. I am so excited to kick off the month of July with our first intentional conversations. I know that last week we were on break because of the 4th of July holiday. And so welcome back to each of you. I want to take a moment now and just acknowledge some of the national observances that are taking place during the month of July. July is Disability Pride Month. And so the same way that I always encourage you all to make sure we're leaning in with solidarity, doing our part to stand 10 toes down with those in our community who are great contributors and doing amazing things, but also may find themselves on the margins where perhaps all of the equities that they deserve are not being provided to them. Let's make sure we stand in solidarity and support. It is July Disability Pride Month. I also want you to know that July is BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, why do we have one that's dedicated very specifically to BIPOC? It is because when you think about people who are on the margins, historically marginalized, those individuals often have to navigate greater complexity around their mental health and really have to work overtime to create great mental strength. And so I am all about radical self-care and prioritizing wellness. And so I want you to keep the conversation going. Mental health is important, right? It is an imperative. So let's make sure we're showing up for each other. I also want you to know that at NWC, we often offer a number of special service offerings that we think are really important, and we want to make sure that they're on your radar. We are offering communities of practice, and we have 4 that are already ready to go. The first is the emotionally regulated leader. I will tell you that emotional regulation has changed my life, and I want it to be something that other leaders really lean into as well. So if that's of interest to you, we want to have a conversation. Storytelling for inclusion, connection, right, and change. Storytelling is very significant, and I think it's a leadership imperative. It helps us to get connected to and proximate to actually some experiences that we may never encounter. And that's a really important way for us to be able to bridge the divide that sometimes can exist. Future-proof leader. the ambiguity, the volatility, the uncertainty, all of the things that we're experiencing right now in this very hard climate is causing many of us as leaders to need to lean in a bit more to how can we show forth that level of agility so that those who fall under our report, those that we have ability to influence, will also remain calm in the storm and in the midst of chaos so that we can continue to be productive of the way in which we need to show up in the workplace. And so if that sounds like something your organization could gain some value from, we'd love for you to join us for a conversation to learn more about that community of practice. And the last but certainly not least, Boundless is one that's near and dear to my heart. It is all about the well-being, the empowerment and leadership of women, right? We want to make sure we're living boundless. And I think that is incredibly important, especially when we think about all that women are having to navigate these days. And so I invite you to give us a call. Send us an email. Let's schedule a discovery call so that we can share more with you about these communities of practice and even explore an option where we will specially custom curate a community of practice that is fit for your organization. Now, you heard me talk about Boundless. We are right now actually recruiting for the Boundless Women of Color cohort. And you can see there's a QR code on the screen, as well as you can go to boundless.nikawhite.com to learn more and to register. Time is winding down. So if you are interested in being a part of this first cohort of women of color, then you're going to need to sign up for it right away. And I hope that you will share the message with those in your community that you think would gain value from it. Now, lastly, by way of a service offering, I talked a little bit about our storytelling community of practice. But what I also want you to know is that building a storytelling culture is something that really requires a lot of intentionality. You need to think about all areas of operation and make sure you're upskilling your leaders around effective storytelling for change, inclusion, and connection. If you're interested in this, then we have a methodology that we would love to take you through and to provide you with support around incorporating a culture framework around storytelling in your organization. So give us a call. Now, it does me great pleasure to reach the part of today's show where I get to give the formal introduction of our guest co-host. And as I do every single week, I always read the person's full bio. That's important to me because I want you as our community to know the accolades, the credentials, the experiences in which our guest co-host shows up to the conversation with. And so I'm super excited to welcome today Robyn Hicks-Guinn is the founder of Hicks-Guinn Law PLLC, where her practice focuses on estate and business succession planning, probate, guardianship, and corporate counsel. With a deep commitment to helping families and business owners secure their legacies, she develops comprehensive estate plans for clients across all financial backgrounds, from those below the poverty line to high net worth individuals. Advises on business transitions and represents clients in complex estate administration matters. Prior to establishing her law firm, Robyn was an associate at a boutique firm where she guided clients through estate planning, probate, and personal injury matters. She also gained valuable experience as a trial court administrator for North Carolina's 7th prosecutorial district and as a law clerk to the Honorable Sherry Beasley of the North Carolina Supreme Court. Beyond her legal practice, Robyn has been deeply engaged in community service and leadership. She currently serves as the chair of the Mecklenburg County Bar Estate Section 2024 to 2025. Some of her past leadership roles include president of the Charlotte Women's Bar and board chair of the North Carolina Licensing Board of General Contractors. Robyn earned her Juris Doctor from North Carolina Central University School of Law, where she was recognized for her academic excellence and pro bono work. She also holds degrees from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and Meredith College. A passionate advocate for education and diversity in the legal profession, Robyn frequently presents at COE programs and mentors aspiring attorneys. In her free time, I'm amazed that she has any, she enjoys competing as a triathlete. Oh my goodness, cooking and traveling. I'm even more impressed now. So do me a favor, podcast community, find those words of affirmation, those reactions, those emojis, place them into the chat. Let's let our guest co-host know how appreciative we are of her being here today with us. I am going to add her into the spotlight. And Before I actually release you, Robyn, to greet this audience in your own way, we do have a tradition here at Intentional Conversations Podcast, and that is before we let our guest co host to greet the audience, we often ask that they will consider sharing something with us that we would not know from hearing their bio, which we've just done, or from looking at your LinkedIn profile. So, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. So, something I like to share is I like to incorporate my faith into the work that I do. So, oftentimes, especially my clients who are coming to me for probate matters, or sometimes my estate planning clients who are coming to me with very difficult questions, we pray together. And I love to do that. So, I consider my job a part of my ministry, and I love to
Mm.
incorporate that into the work that I do with all of my clients.
I so love that. I love that. So I am a woman of deep faith as well. And, it's so interesting, especially when you think about diversity and that there's so many different people that maybe, faith agnostic, or maybe they have different individuals in which they have their faith rooted in. It can be a little tricky, right? You want to make sure that you're not offending people. You want to make sure that you're also showing up authentic. But this resonates with me, Robyn. And the reason why is because you've heard me talk about the Boundless program. And while this is a one to many offering of women that's just kind of all over, normally when I do those types of initiatives, those communities of practice, it is within the context of organizations. But now that I'm doing this as one to many, I am feeling so called to showing up fully authentic within the faith that I stand so deeply, firmly on. And so you sharing that today just gave me even more affirmation that there is a place and a space for that, right? And I think that when we talk about authenticity, we have to be true to ourselves as well as allowing others to show up authentically. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so your history is quite expansive, and so I want to make sure that we can jump right in. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you decide that you wanted to get into the legal profession? What was the inspiration behind it? And how is the way that you show up to this profession maybe different or unique than what you perhaps see within the profession?
So I like to say I turned tragedy into triumph. For me, so whenever, as long as I can remember, I thought I was going to be a doctor. So that was the trajectory I was on. So some of the schools that are mentioned, I actually hold a BS, right, a bachelor's in science in biology, and also in dental hygiene. And I had a very odd turn of events happen in my life. My dad passed away when I was 19 from lung cancer. And then shortly
Mhm.
after that, my high school sweetheart and fiance was killed in a line of duty in Iraq. And so
Mm.
I experienced death very early on in my life. And shortly after that, I started a nonprofit organization with his family, and I found myself in the community advocating for people. And people started to ask me if I was an attorney. And I realized that I was advocating for people so much, they thought that I knew the law, which at that time I had not gone to law school yet, but it really made me reconsider what I should be doing in terms of my life's work. And so I applied to law school. I'm so grateful that I went to North Carolina Central School of Law because their practices and their teachings are deeply rooted in supporting our community. And that's where I learned more about pro bono work and how I could offer the knowledge and services I have for free, but also to make a living.
Fantastic. And so talk to me a little bit about how those experiences perhaps has shaped maybe the uniqueness of the approach and how in which you show up to this profession.
So a lot of my clients tell me that I have a very hands-on and a special connection, right? A lot of people go find their attorneys, whether it's online or they make a few calls, but attorneys where we are trained to interpret the law and understand what it is, but sometimes our line of work causes us to become disconnected. We are dealing with a lot of sad and tragic events. And so at some point, it might make us devoid of emotion. But I think because of the experiences I've had early on in life with death, it allows me to connect with my clients because I understand how important it is to make an estate plan and what it looks like to lose someone and maybe have that estate plan not quite work how they intended, which has happened
Yeah.
to me. Or potentially someone having to go through the probate process and knowing how traumatic it might be to have to go through that process while you're grieving the loss of a loved one. And so I
Yeah.
have a lot of my clients come to me and say, I really felt like you held my hand during this process and I had someone there to support me. And so knowing that this process isn't just about the law and getting things done, but we're also connecting ourselves with people and oftentimes walking them through some of the most tragic times in their lives. So we like to stay connected at Hicks-Guinn Law, and we like to be not only a source of resources, but also if sometimes our clients just call because they need to talk to someone and they feel like they can't, and we'll listen.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Now, so share with me where you're joining the conversation from today. Are you actually based? Is your law firm based in North Carolina?
It is, so we have
Okay.
offices in Charlotte, North Carolina,
Okay.
Raleigh, North Carolina, which is where I am today, and then also
Okay.
in Wilson, North Carolina.
Oh, fantastic. Awesome. So in the Carolinas, I'm actually based in Greenville, South Carolina, so not too far away from you. So I want to jump right into understanding, what you have been seeing in terms of being in the legal profession that specifically focuses on estate planning. Because one of the things that I happen to have been be privy to is that there aren't a lot of people who look like you and I that really lean into the estate planning process. I don't know if it's something that's just off the radar because it hasn't been a part of our lineage and some of the conversations we grew up hearing about. But I would love for you just to talk about your commitment to making estate planning accessible to everyone, regardless of their wealth and their circumstances, because obviously you work with a large clientele that spans across many different financial backgrounds.
Yeah, so first let's start with those who can't afford to get legal services. So I usually work with here in North Carolina, it's called legal aid.
Mhm.
And I assist them with hosting several pro bono estate planning clinics throughout the year. There are other law firms who do the same. And so for those who are not able to afford those services, we sometimes service as many as 75 people at a time. And it
Mm.
is so magical to see a room full of people getting their estate plans who otherwise may not have been able to do so without all of the attorneys who show up to volunteer their work, all of the notaries and witnesses who are also there to volunteer their time, and then also amazing organizations like the Mecklenburg County Bar Association. And a number of those clinics happen throughout the state of North Carolina and also in South Carolina,
Mm.
but also the state bar associations who help facilitate those clinics. So from there, I may have low income clients who come in and I'm able to offer my services at a sliding scale just based on what I know about their finances and maybe what they're trying to accomplish for their families. And so that's how I'm able to offer services to a wide array of people. But then also with guardianships, I serve as a guardian ad litem through the court system. And so I'm also able to offer those services usually at a discounted rate through the court because the court usually pays those fees. And that's where I find a really good opportunity to educate my clients on what's happening, how to best support the individuals who need help.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for giving us some additional insight into that. So I would imagine that there are a lot of misconceptions that are out there regarding estate planning and business succession. So how do you like to educate people and address those topics within your practice?
So I like to educate individuals. So our initial consultation, the full consultation, is actually just an hour of us sitting down. I present information to them, so I'm able to educate them on all the various types of estate planning documents that can be used as tools to create an estate plan. And then we talk through all of the details of their finances, what they might own, and then also what's going on with them personally. like family relationships, because all of that makes up a comprehensive estate plan. And those things should be considered when we're making estate plans. So when we have that initial consultation, I discover a lot about my clients. And I also open up and share information about them in the hopes that they feel encouraged and empowered to give me all the information I need to help them develop an estate plan. And I always like to share with my clients that this is not my plan, it's yours. And it's only going to work as well as you allow me to help you. And so it's always important that my clients are forthcoming and honest with what's going on. And I find it to be a privilege that people trust me with that information.
Yeah, I would imagine that building that rapport definitely values the relationship and benefits the relationship. So I'm interested, Robyn, can you just take a moment to walk us through your holistic approach to estate planning? And specifically, what I'm listening for is how do you balance financial, personal, family dynamics when developing a plan for your clients?
So I could probably give you some examples. So usually I have either single elderly people who are coming to me, married elderly people, and then I
Mhm.
have single people who they may not be so young, right? They're at a point where they're starting to be established in their careers. They may be single, they may be partnered, or they're married. And so that's one of the things we first explore. What does your familial status look like right now? Because
Yeah,
that is going to determine how you're going to decide to distribute your assets to other people. But it also could determine what your net worth looks like later on.
of course.
And so once we discover how this individual wants to declare their assets, right, jointly with someone else or independently as a single person, then we start to discuss who, other than themselves, they would feel comfortable managing their assets if they're not able to manage them for themselves. And those are oftentimes difficult decisions that a lot of my clients have because they've never actually thought about that until they come and meet with me. Who, if I get sick and I can't pay my bills, who am I going to allow access to all of my money or my resources to pay my bills
Right.
or to make sure life for me continues? Who do I want to show up at the hospital and make decisions with my doctor for me? And oftentimes you're giving these individuals a wide discretion to make decisions for you unless you have made some very clear and decisive decisions in your estate planning documents. So that's what we discussed.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I love that you brought to the conversation the difficulty that sometimes that those, dynamics and that conversation can bring because no one wants to think about, having to be without their loved ones. And so I think that the timing of those conversations is really critical. Sometimes we wait until we're forced to have the conversations, right? And I would imagine that maybe part of what you advocate for is have a conversation when everyone is healthy and there's just, joyous occasions and it makes it probably a little less daunting. So I would love for you just to expound upon that. Do you find that to be the case for a lot of families?
So there are some families who they wait too late and I can't help them. What that
Mm,
looks like is maybe a grandmother has a stroke and now she's incapacitated. So she can't
oh,
make a
yeah.
will, can't make a trust. And now the court is deciding who's going to make decisions for her. Or in terms of my younger clients, it's unfortunate. Maybe you get in a car accident or you develop cancer that's, it's fast acting and you don't have time to make those plans. And so what I usually like to tell, especially when my clients or a room full of people is look to your right and look to your left.
Mhm.
Only one of you has a comprehensive estate plan. And when we start to talk
Mm,
the minority community, that number shrinks. You're
yes.
less likely to make plans at all. And when we do, they're usually not comprehensive.
Mm. So I want to lean into that. I kind of started our conversation today with the acknowledgement that this is an area that's not quite as popular with minority communities. And so, what are some of those reasons and factors that you believe, causes the percentage of minority individuals to be so high in terms of not engaging in estate planning conversations?
That's a really good question. So I would say for our baby boomer generation, it's often they don't want to have the discussion.
Yeah.
Um, their children are coming to me and asking me, I want to have this discussion, and they won't have it with me What can I do? And I often say, let's meet. We offer free 15-minute conversations. Let's just meet and let's talk about what might be preventing them from having that discussion. Often, sometimes the child who wants to initiate the discussion is not the child they trust. Um,
Mm,
Sometimes
yeah.
it's also that they fear death, and now that we're talking about it, it makes it more imminent for them. And then also, I mean, like I mentioned before, our community just isn't making those plans, so they don't find the
Yeah.
value in doing so. But especially in
Yeah.
the minority community, each generation, we're acquiring more assets, whether it's
Yes.
real property or personal property. And so there comes a time when you have to really think about what am I leaving behind? And do you actually want to decide how it's going to be distributed, or do you want the state to decide? Because the state
Yes.
has actually already decided for every single citizen, and it's codified
Yes.
statute. And oftentimes it's not what you would want, especially as we are entering into a new phase of partnership. A lot of people are choosing not to get married. Um,
Yes.
and how does that
It's true.
affect uh, what you would leave behind? Or
Yeah.
people are getting divorced and creating blended families. How does that affect what you're going to leave behind? And oftentimes people aren't considering that when they're not making plans, and what results is usually not the result that they would desire.
Yeah, no, that's so well put. I think this is why I am always so eager whenever we're kind of vetting different speakers and guest co-hosts for intentional conversations to make sure that we're getting just a broad range of expertise so that all different topics can surface into this conversation where we're, again, intersecting diversity, equity, and inclusion. So accessibility, and of course, even the fact that there's a large percentage of minority communities who just don't have estate planning on their radar
Yeah.
for a variety of reasons. I think values this benefits this conversation to so many people. So I look forward to people kind of taking heed after being exposed to what you're sharing with us today, Robyn. And I even think about myself as having, aging parents and, never had to think about this, years ago. And my parents were just completely healthy and I'm grateful that they're healthy now. But yes, they're older in their years. And so with that certainly can come some health challenges. And so these are conversations we have to be having. So, you've served as both a trial court administrator as well as a law clerk to state Supreme Court justice. I am curious for you to share with this community how have those experiences shaped your perspective as an attorney and business owner?
Sure. So, first, how they've shaped me as an attorney. I think working in the court system allows you to see how different attorneys show up in court and seeing what it looks like when someone is successful, they're articulate, and they can persuade the court to get exactly what it is that their clients are seeking to achieve. But
Yeah.
then also, you also get access to all of the various types of pleadings and other documents that attorneys submit, and you get to see really well written documents as opposed to
Yeah.
that are lacking in content. Um, and so I think having those opportunities has provided me the experience of seeing what it's like to advocate for your clients as best you can and being able to
Yeah.
model myself after those very good attorneys.
Yeah, I think about the legal profession very similar to how I think about the medical healthcare profession, and that this community knows, because I've shared this multiple occasions, that I will drive a couple hours to be able to go see a Black physician. My dermatologist is actually 2 hours away, and yes, I drive. And I'm fortunate to have a Black woman primary care physician that's in the local area. And when I discovered her years ago, I brought all of my family over to her. And my point here, Robyn, is that we like to connect with people that we feel like we can relate to, that maybe understands the uniqueness of our experiences. And I would imagine that the legal profession is very similar. And so I just want to give you a chance to kind of, draw upon that commentary and share your thinking and your thoughts about how are you finding that to also be true? Because I think that we probably need more, minority legal professionals that are actually caring about the work in a similar fashion the way you do.
I do have quite a bit of clients who seek me out because I am an African American woman or
Mm,
an African American. They
yeah.
just know in their heart that they're going to get a better experience. And
Yeah.
oftentimes it's because they've had an experience with another type of attorney, and they felt slighted, they felt like they weren't heard, um, it, or they felt misunderstood. And so
Yeah.
it's really important to me to bring my whole self and connect with my clients so that they feel like they're heard. They feel confident to ask questions and not feel like they're asking silly questions or stupid questions.
Right.
And I think that matters. I think seeing people like you and being serviced by people like you, it matters.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I completely agree. I completely agree. Did you want to share a little bit more about that?
I would. Also serving on the North Carolina Licensing Board of General Contractors. I was just, or still am, just a general member, but I had the opportunity to serve as the chair for some time. And so I presided over those matters. And you really see when
Mhm.
minorities come into a hearing room and they see other people look like them, they trust the
Yeah,
process. And I think
sure.
that's why diversity is important, especially in today's society, just because of
Right.
how things are changing,
Of
because
course.
it's important to trust the process. And I think when you see people that you know will listen to you, they will believe in you, right? And they will uphold whatever truths that need to be upheld, whether it's in a hearing room or a courtroom, or whether they're advocating for you, that makes you look at the process differently and it makes you trust that process.
Yeah,
And so that's why I think it's important to have minorities everywhere, not just in the
everywhere.
practice of law, but in medicine,
Yes.
in the boardrooms, because people need to trust the process.
Absolutely everywhere. And we do know that there's been a lot of challenges and complications with the judicial process and for a variety of reasons. And so trust definitely is something that for many communities has to be regained and earned. And so I'm so glad that you brought that to our discussion today. So as we're talking about this equity and diversity aspect of the legal profession, I also want to bring to the fore that you have also served as the Charlotte Women's Bar and I think that you chaired the Mecklenburg County Bar Estate section and the president of the Charlotte's Women's Bar. Okay, yes, I want to make sure I was getting that correct. So, it's not just about also from a ethnic, race background, but it's also just from a gender perspective. So, how has your involvement in those organizations influenced your approach to legal practice and community service? Because I still would, venture to believe that maybe the legal profession favors men over women. And so help us to understand what the dynamics are there.
So you're absolutely correct there. Usually in the legal profession, it's male dominated, um,
Mhm.
and African Americans are certainly a minority, a very small minority within the profession. And so I find women who seek me out for that very reason. There are not that many female minority attorneys practicing estate planning, especially in the state of North Carolina or South Carolina. There's a small network of us, and we all know each other, and we work together to service our clients. And so I find as a woman, I always want to speak up. I always want to make sure that my voice is heard because I feel like if I'm the only one in the room, I'm certainly speaking for all women and making sure that their
Yeah.
voices are heard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's so important to do. I always say that when we're part of those underrepresented or usually I like to say underestimated, populations, we have to be willing to be a voice but by protecting the full turf. It's not just about us as an individual in that moment. It is about protecting the full turf of that marginalized community in general. So I appreciate the advocacy that you bring to the profession. And so, I also want to talk about the fact that business succession planning is part of also some of the services that you provide, and it can be deeply personal for business owners. I am a recent graduate of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 small K businesses, small businesses. And what I learned through that experience was that succession planning is not something that just as an entrepreneur just comes kind of natural. You almost have to kind of force yourself to slow down and think about it because we're always working in the business. We're not, as often working on the business, which is,
Right.
including succession planning. And so I would love for you to talk about maybe some key questions or conversations that you encourage clients to have when thinking about the future of their business.
Sure. So oftentimes, my clients who are seeking business succession planning are small or medium-sized businesses who have the principal or the boss, they're starting to think about retirement.
Yeah.
And the first question I ask is, what does a retirement look like for you, and when do you plan to retire? Because that will determine your future answers, right? If we're looking to retire in 2 years, well, do you have someone who can start to
Yeah.
train for to do your job, or do you have someone in mind who might want to take over? Next, are you selling your business, or are you going to stay
Yeah.
on board? And do you want to transition your business? So some people want to transition their business to the next generation, maybe in their family,
Right.
or maybe someone has an apprentice who's been working with them for a really long time and they know their business really well. And they say, this person is really important, not only to the business, but to me. And I
Right.
want for them to either have it or have the opportunity to purchase it from me. And so we start to talk about some very similar factors as we would estate planning, right? Who are those important people in your family or in your business who are going to carry on? Or do you actually want to wind down your business? Or do you want to sell
Yeah.
your business? Because carrying the business on sometimes isn't, it's not an
Right.
option for
Mm-hmm.
a myriad of reasons. But also we're planning for the unfortunate events, the passing
Sure.
of a partner or
Yeah.
the owner, um, or an unfortunate medical situation where someone can no longer serve as
Yeah.
the business owner. Um, and when we don't plan for those things, then that's when we not only are we failing our business, we're failing our clients,
Yeah.
potentially preventing ourselves from getting the retirement that we deserve. Because when
True.
you're working inside of your business and you're the only person guiding the business and moving it forward, you're the only person who's bringing that momentum, the business slows down or it shuts down. And when you don't plan for that, oftentimes you're not able to get the full value out of the business.
Yeah, not only are you not able to get the full value out of the business, for example, if you want to sell, because you have to be, 10 steps way ahead of, the whole selling process to be able to understand what is a good value that's
Right.
commensurate with my business. But then also, I think that we're failing our clients. A lot of us are small businesses. We are in consulting and, we have clients that rely on us. And so, how are we setting them up for success if something were to happen to us as well? And the other thing, Robyn, that I will share, because this came out of the conversation when I was in the Goldman Sachs program, is sometimes we assume that our children will want to take on our business. And it's not always the
They don't.
case,
They don't
right?
want to.
Yes, we need to have those conversations. Don't just assume that, our offspring are going to just, gladly take on the business. They may have completely different interests, may not even care about whatever the business is. I mean, so yeah, there's lots to be said for planning in advance for
Right.
succession, so you can cover the ground of all of those key questions and considerations.
Absolutely. And I would say if your intention is to have your children carry on in your business, start having them do simple things at a young age
Yeah,
to see, because you might find that you don't want your child to carry on your business.
that's
Um,
a great
and
point, Robyn.
you won't know that until you've seen the work that they do and find out whether or not they have that same passion that you do about the work.
Yes, no, absolutely, 100%. That's really critical. I laughed, but my daughter works in the business with me. She actually works in all of the family businesses, and it's because she's made a very firm decision that that's what she wants. She wants to put her time, her talent, her treasures into building the family enterprises. And so, but then we have a son that he's not quite there yet, which is fine, and he may never get there. So these are my adult kids who are completely kind of in their own journeys. But it's such a good conversation to have as small business owners and not just to assume. And so thank you for giving us a chance to provide some enlightenment around that. So let's now talk about guardianship and probate cases. I know that they can be emotionally charging, right? And so, you talked about your faith being very much the center of how in which you like to support families during those difficult transitions. I would love for you to share some thoughts or advice about how, what do you do for those who are just starting the process? What are some things they should have in their consideration set?
So I'll start with the state estate administration or probate. When those individuals come to me, I ask them to complete what's called an estate administration questionnaire. And
Mhm.
it's basic information that would allow me to complete all the forms I would need to file the estate. But in getting that information, what I'm really learning about is the family dynamics.
Mhm.
And um, oftentimes, people might have children that no one knows about, or they're not quite sure how they are a sibling. And so we have to uncover all of those mysteries as
Yes.
well, because the
Yes.
court has to know. And then I help the family navigate through those relationships. Because and I'll say everyone that has the same standing, whether it's a parent or a sibling, or a friend, they all have the same rights. And so, one of my jobs as your attorney would be to make sure that everyone's rights are protected, and
Yes.
also to make sure that you're following the law. So, after I'm able to receive all the information I need, I'm also educating you on how the law would apply to that specific
Mhm.
situation, especially in estate administration. Now,
Yes.
oftentimes spouses are entitled to certain things. And we have, especially in North Carolina, a lot of people who are transitioning to North Carolina from other states that recognize common law marriage. And so they think, oh, this has been my common law spouse for a number of years. Well, in North Carolina, we don't recognize that. And so if you're not legally married, you're not entitled to those same rights. And so in North Carolina, what it's called is spousal allowance. A spouse is entitled to the
Mhm.
first $60,000 off the top from the estate. And you actually get that before the estate administration starts. Your
Okay.
biological children, so if we can prove that it's your biological child, they're also entitled to $10,000. And so not knowing those relationships can jeopardize whether or not we can support children while we're going through that estate process, or whether spouses can be supported, because oftentimes funds aren't being released until the end of probate. And so that's one
Yeah.
thing that I like to share with families, even in estate planning. You may not want to wait. You and your family may not be able to wait until we get to the end of that probate process. By then, maybe a house has been lost,
Yeah.
assets have been lost. And so sometimes a trust is a better option, especially for families. Now, with guardianships, I'm looking for how people are related, but also I'm looking for that star family member or friend who wants to rise to the occasion and be a servant to
Yeah.
the person that we call a respondent or a ward.
Mhm.
Sometimes family members don't want to serve for a myriad of reasons. And
Mm.
so I start our discussion off by saying, I'm not here to judge. What I'm
Mhm.
here to do is protect the person who needs help, and I can't do that
Yeah.
if everyone's not honest with me. And so finding that one key person or maybe two people who are willing to serve that respondent, the person who is no longer capable of managing their assets and or also their health care is really important, because this person almost serves as a pseudo parent for the ward
Yeah.
to make sure that they're living in the right place, they're being bathed every day. So just the simple things. Your guardian is making sure that you're taken care of from day to day. So that would be the guardian of the person. And then the guardian of your estate is the person managing all of your assets. So they're
Yeah.
paying your mortgage or your for your lease, they're purchasing groceries to make sure that you eat, or sending DoorDash, however we might be able
Yeah.
to do to you. But they're also assisting with Medicaid and Medicare applications. So we want to make sure that in guardianships and also in estates, that the people we're appointing can be trusted, but
Yeah.
also learn how we can avoid guardianships. And we can avoid
Sure.
guardianships by having a healthcare power of attorney and a durable power of attorney. In the eyes of the court, those two documents are equivalent to a guardianship. And as long as they were signed before a notary and witnesses, they are valid.
Yeah.
And the court will
Yeah.
follow those documents instead of appointing a guardian. And what I often find is the guardian that the court appoints may not be the guardian that the principal would have wanted, because the
Mm.
is receiving information from third parties. We know we can know
Sure.
we can consider what that ward wants, but if there is evidence to the contrary that the person you desire to take care of your person or your assets is not the best fit, the court will not appoint that person.
This is so good, Robin. I hope that people are really absorbing all of the great nuggets that you are sharing. I mean, as you were giving some of the examples of the, the complexity of the dynamics that can surface throughout these conversations, all I'm thinking about is wow, this sounds a little bit like watching a television, show, right? But the
Maybe.
reality is that many people, this is their reality, right? And so what I like that you unearth is the importance of the preventative, approach to this is, go ahead and have these conversations early on, decide as a group in a very, sensible way how these decisions are going to be made so that it makes it less complicated. Because to your point, if the court has to appoint someone, it may not be who the individuals in the family would have deemed to be the most, appropriate individual. And so again, these are things that we just don't think about every single day unless we are forced to think about them, which I'm hoping that this conversation is going to be wide and reaching so many different individuals to help us become much more prepared. It's also bringing to the fore for me the importance of the humanity aspect
Mhm.
of those who are in the legal profession doing this specific type of work. I mean, of course, we could say that across all of the different types of legal work that's being done, but I find that, especially as a DEI practitioner who really values a human centered approach, that this is the time that you need for those professionals to really show up for the families who are in need, right? In a way that goes beyond just checking a box of going through the activities of the, what the profession requires, but really leaning into again the emotional aspect of nurturing those families through this in a
Right.
way that also helps set them up for success in the best way possible. And so I wanted to acknowledge that and applaud the fact that you are modeling that for hopefully for others who are watching and also trying to be inspired by that way of serving in this legal capacity. So thank you, Robin.
And I wanted to mention we've talked a lot about adults.
Yes.
We haven't mentioned how estate planning
Ah,
affects children.
it's
And
true. Let's go there.
yeah, so when an adult passes away and leaves behind assets for a minor child, they also
Yeah.
have to go through a guardianship process. Someone is appointed to manage that child's assets unless they are distributed through a trust.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so oftentimes the court has to hear testimony from various people within the family to determine who would manage those assets for that child until he or she turns 18. And
Right.
sometimes the court does not decide that the best fit person is a parent. And then also, I like to ask my parents if something were to happen to you, who would take care of your children in the short term?
Yeah. Yeah. In
And
the short term, in the interim, while all these
Mhm.
decisions are being made.
Right.
Yeah.
But then who would also take care of your children for the long haul? And most people haven't
Hmm.
thought about it.
Yeah.
And they haven't thought about it for their children at each phase of their child's life. So now
Yeah.
maybe so I have a 9-year-old who he'll be 10 tomorrow, and then I have a 4-year-old who will be 5 in August. And maybe my answer changes from one person to a different person or a couple depending on how
Yeah.
old my children are, right? Oftentimes we say, "Oh, it's definitely going to be my parents." Well, what if the time comes and your parents can't take care of your children?
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a really great point. So I'm so glad that you brought the young people into the conversation relative to this discussion. And what comes up for me is also just really the curiosity around what if because a lot of people have gotten into this paradigm of I want my baby to have a god mommy, a god daddy, right? So I'm going to ask certain people to be the godparents
Sure.
and I don't know, and I would love your thoughts about this. I don't know if people really think intently about what that role really means, and to put it into more of a legal binding kind of situation to where
Right.
that is the case. Because sometimes those individuals who we may ask to be the godmommy or the goddaddy of our babies, they may be people that we're in close community with at that time in our lives, but how many of us kind of drift away and we never go back to revisit that? And so I would love for you just to touch on that for a moment, please.
Yeah, so I see that a lot in estate planning and also in guardianships. I will
Yeah.
say the court doesn't recognize godparents, excuse me, as a legal title. It's not written in statute. And so if you're appointing people as godparents and you
Yes.
intend for them to care for your children, they
We
don't,
got to take another step.
yeah, you have to take another step. And so oftentimes when we are planning for children, what we draft. It's called a kids protection plan. We are
Yeah.
appointing short-term guardians, we're appointing long-term guardians, and then also we're setting up a trust for that child so that a trustee can have access to the resources, but also they're distributing those resources based on a set of rules that we've made together, right? I can't think of an
Yeah.
18-year-old who should receive $500,000 of their mom's insurance policy.
Right.
what
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
want, if your goal is for your children to go to college, is for some of that to be used for tuition, room and board, maybe some to help them start a business, maybe some to purchase a car. Everyone doesn't want to go to college. So then what are we paying for, right? Are we paying for them to go through trade school so that they'll have skills to support themselves? And so when we think of estate planning, that's what we're thinking about. How are we protecting our children from themselves until
Yes.
they get
Protecting
to
them from
mature,
themselves.
mhm,
That's so
they're
good.
getting to a mature age. Because
Yes.
oftentimes when you're leaving assets either through probate or through a will, creditors are entitled to those assets. So if your children have debt, the creditors are they're a moving target. I know exactly how much money your parents left you. I know when you received it, and I also know
Yep.
how you received it.
Yep.
When
So
we're
be careful, young people, when you're walking by all those stations on college campuses that's telling you to come on,
yes,
come on, let's get this
don't get the
credit
card. Don't get the card.
card.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Good
then with
point.
yeah, so and then with guardianships, just making sure that we are choosing people who will align with our personal preferences.
Yeah.
Sometimes your best friend will not raise your child how you would. When we
So
talk about
true. Sometimes our parents may not raise our children the way we
exactly.
would or we would want them to. Yes.
And so when you think about who's going to take care of your children, really think about the life that you would want your children to live when you're not here. And that's going to help guide you to determine who those, maybe not the godparents, right? Because we can still hold those titles. Maybe that just means that it's our favorite person in the moment, and that's okay. But when we start thinking about a guardian, you want to think about who is going to actually be the pseudo parent for your children when you're not here, who's going to provide that lifestyle, even if it's with the resources that you left behind. And then also understanding that custody and guardianship are two different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we
Absolutely.
have
Absolutely.
blended families, families of
Yeah.
divorce or partnership, what does that really look like? Because if you're not married, there's no definition of what that looks like. The other parent is presumed to be the fit person, and that's not always the case either.
Not always
So
the case.
we need to protect our children.
Hmm. Hmm. So much to unpack with the layers of this broad conversation, and we're getting close to running out of time, but obviously, Robyn, you are a great student of your craft, your space, and I want to just understand, how do you stay current with changes in estate law, and what trends and or challenges do you see emerging in estate and business succession planning?
So I stay current by teaching because it forces me to really dive into the law and be very
Yeah.
knowledgeable about whatever subject I'm teaching on. So I
Yeah.
teach several courses a year about estate planning, estate administration, and also guardianships. And then I get out in the community and also teach as well. So I do free seminars at churches and for other organizations. So I can listen to the various issues they're having and make sure that I can answer those questions when people come into my law office.
Yeah.
And then in terms of hot topics, we talked about guardianships. Guardianships are really big right now for people who are being deported. They're having to leave the
Yes.
US and leave their children behind or spouses
Oh,
behind. So just
so
estate
true.
planning with, yeah, deportation. Um,
So true.
but also Medicaid and Medicare planning. So if you know you don't have the resources to afford a long-term care, how are we making sure we're protecting some of your assets, especially for this baby boomer generation who is now most of them have Medicare and many of them will have to rely on Medicaid for long-term care. So how are we protecting the assets that you do have to make sure they're going to the next generation as opposed to being used to pay back Medicaid after you've passed away? So those are some hot topics that I like to help guide my clients through at this time.
Yeah, so, so good. Lots to think about, lots to consider that again, unless we're kind of forced to be a part of these types of conversations, it may not be on our radar. So that's why these conversations are so critically important. Thank you for the work that you do to help bring awareness to these really important topics. So we're about out of time. I have like maybe two more questions for you, and then we will wrap up. I want to understand because when I was reading your bio, I said I'm not sure when she has time to sleep because I was thinking about all the many different ways that you show up in so many different spaces and places. But you shared that outside of your legal work, your bio talked about how you are a triathlete. You
Mhm.
like to cook, you're a traveler. And so, how do those passions maybe influence your approach to the work that you do, the profession that you're in?
Sure. Engaging in those activities helps me reset. We've talked about
Yes.
the heaviness that comes with what I do, and sometimes I
Mhm.
have to just step away for a moment and reset. With the triathlons, I will say so. I've already mentioned, so I have two sons, and so to get back into the shape that I prefer, I like to run those triathlons to just to prepare myself. My husband and I, Lambert, we're having our third child, and so just making sure that I'm staying fit, keeping myself healthy, and that's important. Making sure so the cooking is cooking healthy meals, um, and my husband and I we take turns cooking, and sometimes we cook together. I cook with my children, so that's just a form of connecting. I love to provide
Wow.
delicious meals. That is one of my love languages. And so being able to, I also love to eat. Um, so
Me too.
I enjoy cooking. Um, and then just traveling. I love to go to new places, learn about other cultures. And I find that when I return home, I feel so much more grateful for the experiences I had, for the family I have, and then just the love that I'm able to share with other people so freely, especially here in our country.
Yes, no, no, absolutely, absolutely. So what I'm hearing you say is that the connectedness to family and the ability to have moments of joy, doing things that just brings you joy and pleasure, is a way to reset so that you are recharged to go back and do the hard work that you do, helping families to navigate some difficult times. And so I think that's a message that is, beautiful to end on. I do want to give you the final words, though. So I would like to, Robyn, if you can, we've talked about a lot, but there's probably more things that's on your mind that you have some energy for that perhaps you would like to socialize with this community. I want to give you a chance to do so. Before I release you for that, I want to thank the community for showing up, for being a part of our Intentional Conversations podcast. We do appreciate you seeing this window of time as valuable. We hope that you will share the show out with others if it has benefited you. I know there's a lot of great nuggets that were shared. And I also want to, on behalf of this community, Robyn, thank you so much for being here today. And I want to give you the final remarks.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we were able to meet today and have the important discussions about estate planning, probate, and also guardianships. And I would just encourage everyone to take the next step, whether that's having a free consult. There are several attorneys who offer that in the state of North Carolina and also South Carolina. And then just learning a little more about what estate planning, probate, and guardianships could do for you and your family. Oftentimes, you'll find that a lot of resolutions could be found from this just those three practice areas, and then
Yeah,
also seeking out an attorney in your local community who can help you. I'm happy to connect other people who don't live in the state of North Carolina, or feel that one of my offices are too far away. But then also attending other seminars just like this.
yeah,
Many of them are free and provide valuable information that can help you navigate all of those issues. And so you
yeah.
can me, I have a website, www.hicksguinnlaw.com. No commas, no dashes. And then also I can be reached at 704-502-5327. You can also find me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, almost on every social media platform that you can think of. And it's just Robyn Hicks-Guinn. It's just me.
I love it. So I think you may be the first guest co-host in all of 5 years that has literally given your cell phone number or your number actually to our audience. And so, yes, we're going to place all of your information, including the social media that you're on, so people can connect with you. Thank you again so very much. Wishing you all a safe weekend, and we look forward to seeing you again next week for another episode of Intentional Conversations podcast. Be safe. Bye bye.